The controversial film Midnight Express won 2 Oscars, but it got so much hate that Oliver Stone, the screenwriter, publicly apologized for it. And the real guy it was based on, Billy Hayes, was ashamed of it. And after watching it, I still think it's a great prison movie. So let me tell you what works in the film. And afterwards, I'm going to take you down one of the wildest true story rabbit holes I've been on in a while. You'll definitely want to stick around for that. Now, quick warning, there's going to be some spoilers in this review, so if you haven't seen the film yet, you may want to check it out first. Let me paint you a quick premise of the film. It's the 1970s and drug smuggling into the US has reached an all-time high. The US begins to crack down globally on drug smuggling, including Turkey, where our hero Billy Hayes finds himself with the great idea to smuggle some hash through the Istanbul International Airport back to the US. And of course he's caught, and that's where the real nightmare begins. Now, I don't know about you all, but I don't think smuggling drugs from Turkey during a heightened sense of tension between the US and Turkey is a really great idea. I don't know why you would even think to do that, especially in a foreign country where if you're caught, you are going to be punished by their rules, not by the US rules that you are used to. I know he was young, but man, what an idiot. The first thing going through my mind when I was watching that scene, I thought to myself, how desperate or stupid do you have to be to think this is a good idea in Turkey in the 70s of all places? Like, come on. That's like trying to smuggle drugs out of Russia right now. It's just not worth it. And this film was based on a true story, but how much of it was actually true and how much of it was Hollywood trying to create a film that people wanted to watch? I'm going to cover that in a little bit. So let's talk about what I think works really well in this film. The sense of despair that Billy goes through is really easy to understand. He's first sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in a Turkey prison, which is bad enough, right? But you have to think to yourself, he's young, he'll do his time, he'll stay out of trouble, he'll learn a valuable lesson, he'll never do this again, and he'll go home and have the rest of his life in front of him. But that's not how things work out, because a few weeks before he's set to be released, they actually assign a new life sentence to him to make an example of him. So imagine that, going through a few years in a Turkish prison, to being a few weeks out from release, to then being told you will spend the rest of your life in jail. Now that is a gut punch that I'm sure anyone could imagine. And the despair you would go through having that happen to you would drive you to do all sorts of things. Now that's a brutal scene, and the courtroom outburst that follows is a great moment in the film, even though it's not exactly true. The next thing I think that works really well is the dynamic between the foreign prisoners that are in this Turkish jail. We meet Max, who is a Brit, played by John Hurt. He's strung out on all sorts of drugs, but he is a friendly, charismatic person that Billy befriends. And then there's also the hot-headed Jimmy, played by Randy Quaid, who dreams about nothing but escaping. And he even mentions in this, the only way really out is through the Midnight Express, which is basically their term for sneaking out or escaping illegally, not through the court system, because everybody tells him that you better try to bribe somebody, try to find a corrupt lawyer or a politician, because that's the only way you're going to get out of here. The rest of the cast is great too. We have Rifki, the Turkish inmate who snitches on them and who is a thorn in their sides the whole film and actually sets into motion the third act of the film. And then the head guard Hamadou, who is constantly brutalizing Billy and some of the other inmates and is just a terror on screen. I think a great film about prisons always has exciting, intense moments related to a prison escape. Now, at first, Billy's content to do his time, pay off a politician, pay off the judge, whoever he has to with the help of his family back home to get out of there in the 4 years and 2 months they have set. When he gets sentenced to that long lifetime sentence, that avenue of escape goes out the door. So now they're looking for escape, and Jimmy, their hot-headed friend, overhears that there are catacombs running underneath the prison. They find a weak section of wall that's just damaged from water over the years, and they start peeling it away and start chipping it away, and they actually get through, and they get down to the catacombs. It's really exciting. Jimmy, Billy, and Max get down there, and then they're going through these flooded tunnels. They don't know where to go. They're going left, right. And after all of that, the tense moments, everything else, they reach a dead end. There's no escape from these catacombs. They lead nowhere, and they're stuck right back where they are. And then Rifki informs on them. It leads to Jimmy being taken away, beaten, and it leads to a psychotic break for Billy, who attacks Rifki, and he's sent to the one place that's even worse than where he is now, the sanatorium, where all the mentally insane and unstable people are. And it's funny because sometimes I see these prison movies, and they have scenes where the inmates are out and about. They're given a little bit of freedom. They get to be outside. They're doing things. They're talking with friends. They're having friendship moments. And in my mind, I'm like, this isn't really that bad. Like, I know you're a prisoner and you have no room for freedom and you're stuck with all these other convicts. But like, I've seen some of the prisons currently now, like the ultramax security things, especially in like Venezuela and other countries where you're basically stuck in a cell 24/7 with no freedom and no ability to do anything. So he's sent to a sanitarium. Or is he? Does that really happen? How much of this is actually true? But real quick, if you like this kind of deep dive, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment because it helps me bring more of these deep dives to you. Now, the moment you've been waiting for, let's go down the rabbit hole of the true story of what actually happened to Billy instead of what we see on the film. So let's talk about that infamous court scene. When he finds out that he's going to be sentenced to life and he's in court listening as the judge and the prosecutor read off his new sentence, he then has a chance to respond. And he has a long speech where he's basically decrying how unfair this is. And he basically calls Turkey a nation of pigs. Now, this courtroom scene did not happen in real life. And that speech did not happen in real life either. And this film was filmed in 1978, so there's still a bit of hostility and tension there. It was not received very well. And then after Billy is sent to the sanatorium, he is removed after a while by the head guard Hamadou to be punished and tortured and just abused. He's taken into a private room where Hamadou is going to beat him. Billy fights back. He pushes him. Hamadou hits the back of his head against a coat rack and it actually penetrates his head and he's killed on the spot. Billy takes his clothes, puts them on, and just walks out of prison, walks to freedom basically, and that's how the film ends. That did not happen at all. He did not kill anybody. There was no murder of any head guard with a walk out of the prison. That didn't happen at all. That was just a fabrication to give you a nice little clean ending in the film, but it was a little silly when I was watching it. I'm like, this dude has been starved and beaten for years. He's like a $140 soaking wet. And this guard is well fed, probably 230, 240, just has weapons and is abusing this guy. And this guy fights back and kills him. I don't think so. So what really happened? And this is the twist that most people don't see coming. That long prison sentence actually gave him the chance to escape. He was able to arrange transfer to a farm prison situation where he would live on an island and perform farming duties, and it'd be a nicer situation for him, even though he'd still be imprisoned. After a few months on this prison, there was a violent storm, and he was able to sneak out, steal a boat, and row 17 miles into the ocean and across to a port in Turkey. He then blended in with the locals for a bit, changed his outfit, changed his look, and then trekked across Turkey and snuck through a river into Greece, where he was questioned by the Greek authorities for a few weeks, but ultimately they decided to send him back to the US and not back to Turkey. So where does the controversy come from? So Oliver Stone actually won an Oscar for the screenplay for this film, but he later denounced it because every single Turkish person in this film is made out to be a monster. It paints the whole country negatively. Every single person we see that is not an American or a Brit or a foreigner is basically a nasty, filthy, monstrous, corrupt person. The lawyers, the politicians, the judges, the prison guards, the prison inmates, everybody is painted in a negative light, and it really made the nation look bad. And people were pissed off. So Oliver Stone publicly apologized for it. And Billy Hayes actually felt shame for it because he acknowledged that he made a mistake and he was willing to do his time. That life sentence was just too much for him to take. But he never had the idea to paint the whole country of Turkey in such a negative light, especially in the 1970s. And he finally visited Turkey many, many, many years later, and he felt deep shame and remorse for the impact that the film had. I would venture that this is similar to how Peter Benchley wrote the book that led to Jaws, and then he felt real shame for it because a bunch of sharks were hunted because of his book, and that was never his intention. I'm sure this is the same thing here. Oliver Stone, Billy Hayes set out to make an exciting prison movie that is based on a true story and accidentally made a whole country look horrible. And that's where I think the whole controversy and brutality of this film comes from. It's not what you see on screen, because if you've seen prison movies or even like a show like Oz, way worse stuff happened on screen than what happens in Midnight Express. But it's the way that the whole country is represented. That's where it gets its brutality, and that's where it gets its controversial tag, not from the on-screen actions in the film. So there you go, the bones of it all, the sentence, the drug smuggling, the life extension, the early times in the prison and his friends, that has some truth to it. But the whole sanatorium, the prison escape, the way he did it, all of that was fabricated 100% completely. None of it happened. But I think they set up Hamadou as such a negative and hateful and spiteful person that they probably thought the audience wouldn't be satisfied without seeing him get his comeuppance or seeing some revenge. So how do I rate this film and where do I land on it? I think as a prison break movie, it's a really fun time. I'm not going into a prison movie expecting to see sunshine and bunnies and happiness and all that kind of stuff. I'm expecting to see some corruption, some brutality, some evilness, some wicked characters, and some betrayals and things like that. So I got all of that. It was exciting for me to see. Some of it was a little far-fetched and unbelievable, even to me who didn't know the true story before I started. And I also think that I'm one of those people who, after a film is over, especially if they say true story, I like to go read about it. I like to go on a deep dive through Wikipedia and different sources to see what exactly happened and what the story was. So this was one of my favorite films to do that with because the story's even crazier than the film. So where do I rank it? Out of 5 stars, if I had to put a number on it, I would say this is something like a 3.9 out of 5. That's a solid number for it. I think it's a really fun movie if you enjoy these kind of films, and I was actually going on a prison film kind of kick at the time. So there you go. Let me know if you've seen the film and leave a comment talking about what you thought of it, what you think of the true story, and what Billy Hayes had to say later on in life about the way the film made Turkey look. So let me know if you can separate fact from fiction and just enjoy the film for what it was and treat the true story as its own thing. Until next time, stop scrolling, start watching.